So, character A steals something or breaks something, or something happens that character A is involved in. The police or authorities are involved in trying to find out who. Character A expresses guilt in the background. Which show did this concept better? Let's find out. I want to thank you guys for the support. I want to shout out Jovial for this fantastic fan art. It was done quite some time ago, but I still appreciate it. I love all the fan art that you guys make. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Amino, Discord, wherever you guys choose. Join the Panda Armada and go to alphaj.show/panda and support the best reviewing panda on YouTube. So unlike my Nick Megaverses, which if you guys haven't seen, you guys should see, I'm going to start out with the Casagrandes first. This episode of the Casagrandes centers around Bobby. He's excited to see who will be the employee of the month, thinking that it has to be him this month. He's also speaking to Lori, who has that other family who has episodes similar to this. By the way, I'm super late to this, but the fact that this guy is voiced by Carlos from Big Time Rush, I can't separate the two anymore. So as you'll see in SpongeBob, the big conflict comes from SpongeBob throwing a peanut at a giant clam, which sets up the misunderstanding. But before then, all there was to build up the moment was a sleeping clam, nothing else. You would go into it with no opinion of the gentle giant. Here, it's different. The conflict surrounds Sergio, their pet bird, and his treatment of Bobby, described by Lori as playful teasing.
Sergio, I just did my hair! Sergio, can you keep it down?
What? Turn it up? Okay! Fish is ready, Fancy Pants!
Hey!
He's molting! Almost bikini season!
But does he have to molt into my breakfast?
I could do it in your lunch instead!
All of that happens in a minute, by the way. If that's playful teasing, I don't even want to know what Sergio would do if he's upset. When I think playful teasing, I think throwing a paper ball at someone, filling up their Minecraft rooms with sand, doing those dumb lyric pranks, or basically anything where the damage is either minimal or reversible. I'm not saying that this is bullying, but when one person clearly doesn't see the enjoyment of it over and over, and no one else in the family seems to care, you're setting up the audience to be against the bird because of how smug he is. I will say maybe all of this is a cultural difference, and if it is, let me know. Bobby brings his dad for his big moment, being awarded Employee of the Month. However, it doesn't work out that way.
The new Employee of the Month is... Please. Sergio!
The way this is set up, I wouldn't be surprised if that smug look given to Bobby when Hector was announcing the Employee of the Month was because he knew. Sergio, the bird, also congratulates Bobby on losing. It's here where I'm in this sort of gray area. On one hand, I don't think the message here of being competitive is that bad, nor do I feel like when guys come together and tease and pick at each other is always unhealthy. In fact, many times I can get like that, but I definitely read the room and read the situation before just turning to people like Sergio. It has to be someone who would either be asking for it, like a random player on an FPS game talking smack, or a friend that is okay with being pushed and teased like that, like if we were at the gym or playing against each other. Maybe something happened, or this is just a Loud House trademark of character has to act like X for the moral to make sense. However, if you've seen my Nickelodeon Megaverses, you know that a bad episode can just be episodes where the moral doesn't make sense for the story written. So the way that they set up this conflict is to have Bobby say what most people are thinking going into this episode.
You know what, Sergio? I've had it. I wish you would just fly away and never come back.
Fine! Peace out!
Roll the credits. No, seriously, we're talking about a bird who doesn't give Bobby a break, and we're supposed to believe that this is an overreaction. But that's not how people work. And for a moral-driven show, you have to pay more attention to that. If it were another show, like let's say SpongeBob, then fine. Sparing the super egregious episodes, there is more leeway with having the characters be over the top with their rudeness. However, the Casagrandes is story-driven and moral-driven, and like with Gumball the Bros, I reject the premise of this this off the bat. The episode is going to try to convince me that Bobby is in the wrong for what he did, when that's not true. It's not like Bobby did anything in the beginning to warrant this. It's not like this happens in private. In fact, everyone around him seems perfectly okay with it. To say that you'd be okay with it is fine, but to say that Bobby in this case should feel remorse for saying what he said to Sergio seems like an argument you're not going to convince me with. With the initial meltdown out of the way, let's see how SpongeBob handles this plot. So apparently it is National Free Day, in which there are free balloons, free soft drinks, free plugs to merch, and much more. The episode depicts Mr. Krabs as the cheap and crazy one, but I'm also going to the gift shop on National Free Day. It's like if Chuck E. Cheese had a National Free Day, you're going to default to the prize desk. Or would I go for the skee balls? Anyway, off that, one thing that I'd like to explain in great detail later on is that one of the fundamental differences between seasons 1 to 3 and what came after is the fact that many of these adventures require for the characters to be underwater for them to work. Look at Finding Nemo. Obviously the entirety of the movie couldn't work above water, but also the movie couldn't work if it wasn't 3D. And then contrast that with other movies like Shark Tale, which has and can work above water and most likely has been told in other mediums. Sometimes the right medium or genre or setting can amplify a story's message and make it seem tailor-made for the characters, thus further immersing yourself within a world that makes logical sense. With the seasons that came after, it becomes harder and harder to argue that. And more so that we're getting a lot more sitcom-y, flavor of the week plots, which are not all bad, but not all tailored towards the nautical adventures that SpongeBob was having when you look at the execution of it. It seemed like a lot of decisions early on created a specific aesthetic that made SpongeBob irreplaceable. One of those decisions has to do with the Bikini Bottom Zoo.
Do they have the largest oyster held in captivity? It also does tricks. He spits a giant pearl 100 feet in the air, like a cannonball.
It's funny that this kid would also in the same season call these two dorks. It looks like a bubbling rivalry that we never seen fleshed out. Talk about lost opportunity. Oyster Stadium, a giant clam, spitting a pearl that is tailor-made for something underwater. Sure, you can argue that when you boil down Finding Nemo into its core plot, that other shows and mediums have tried that plot. My point isn't that the plot itself is unique to the setting, but that the execution of the entire movie, it couldn't work everywhere. Yes, we've had to find X plots in the same way that we've had plots like what this versus is about. That's a staple in storytelling. But think of the scenes within the movie, everything from the jellyfish moments to the dentist moments. Those moments can only work with how Finding Nemo was made in the same way that any other Nickelodeon show or a lot of underwater shows couldn't just have a zoo with clams as their main exhibit.
This is the greatest day of our lives!
This is the greatest day of our lives? Boring!
Although SpongeBob tries his best, that clam is knocked out, and I don't blame him. He gets a bag of sea peanuts and throws a singular one at the gentle giant. This setup for a misdirection really works here. I feel like if I were watching this for the first time, I would suspect exactly what SpongeBob suspects, and I have no reason to think otherwise. Like I mentioned earlier, with this situation and the situation that'll happen in the Casa Grandes, the entire episode is filled to the brim with police and worried peers questioning what could have caused the initial conflict. Naturally, it starts with the sea zookeepers, who try to calm the clam. However, one gets flung into the next season. This begins a giant weight put down on SpongeBob, thinking that he was the one who upset Clamu. We'll see how SpongeBob handles this guilt once we get back to the Casa Grandes.
Hey, you seen Sergio? No one can find him. Everyone is freaking out.
Sergio! Sergio!
Naturally, the family freaks out about Sergio, and it sets in what Bobby just did. I will give the episode credit. The guilt from Bobby doesn't exactly seem to stem independently from his own words to Sergio, but rather the reactions from his family and how much they miss Sergio. In a sense, I can see an argument made that it would be me projecting my selfishness to not care about Sergio, and the better route would be to fix things with Bobby and Sergio and have them both coexist. However, in real life, you don't always get that luxury. Sometimes, someone isn't going to coexist peacefully, and this episode, rather than spending time looking at the fact that Sergio was a jerk to Bobby, would much rather tug on your heartstrings by showing you a distraught family, an appeal to emotion, showing you a family disconnected with one of their pets.
Roberto, you were the last one to see him. Do you know where he went?
No! It's not like I told him to leave and never come back. But I'll go look for him.
Of course, like with SpongeBob and the smoking peanut, the character goes into a panic, trying to keep calm and balance the guilt that prevents him from saying what he did. Unlike SpongeBob, however, the episode shows very clearly that Bobby is the one who upset Sergio, and Bobby is the sole factor in Sergio leaving. He does look for Sergio, and that shows that Bobby can put his problems with Sergio aside to make his family happy. He thinks about coming clean with his family, or at least he did until the police were involved. If anything, the person who seems to be taking this the hardest is Rosa, who can be seen visibly upset. Of course, now with his family wanting the maximum charges pressed against the person who harmed Sergio, Bobby doesn't want to come clean anymore. It's an alright way to take the story. Personally, I would have been a lot more satisfied if the episode took measures to show why Sergio can be beneficial to the family, or show that maybe Bobby was having a bad day, or show times when Bobby and Sergio can coexist peacefully. Perhaps showing that by withholding the Employee of the Month from Bobby, it was a roundabout way to have Bobby respect the award and work hard for it. This is when you should build Sergio up, rather than tearing Bobby down and proving that he's just going to take the constant negative behavior. The fact that they don't do this is troubling towards the moral. However, Bobby does a great job of carrying this episode, especially with his reaction to the authorities.
I don't know anything. What, you're looking at my scratches? I fell into a bush. You know, instead of questioning me, maybe you should be trimming that dangerous bush outside.
He decides that maybe if he gets a replacement bird, that the family wouldn't notice. Bobby is generally shown to not be that bright, so it's in character to think that a drone with bird accessories would be all he needed. Granted, his family seems to fall from the same branch of logic, so they didn't notice either, except the dog. What a strange family. I guess some can make the argument that the Casagrandes were happier that Sergio was home than to press him for more information. Of course, because the permanent problem was given a temporary solution, it falls flat.
Oh, poor fella must be drained from all that therapy. He can recharge, I mean nap in my room.
But you never let him in your room.
If only the episode would pry into why, that would make this a great episode. You want us to empathize with these characters and practice the morals that are being taught. But you don't want to open the door of why characters do the things that they do in the first place. Show us why Bobby doesn't have a high opinion of Sergio. Show us why the family seems to have no problem with that. Show us the reason Sergio doesn't seem to have a problem with the way that he treats Bobby. If any show can do that, the Loud House and the Casagrandes were tailor-made for that. I would never ask SpongeBob, Gumball, Rise of the TMNT, or the like to sit down and have strong moral-centric dialogue, because the primary goal of these shows is to make you laugh and to have fun. However, when you present a show like this, to be funny, sure, but to primarily tell stories that are moral-driven, you are doing a disservice by hand-waving the core of the issue. To say that children wouldn't understand is to be short-sighted. I'm not saying to use words that only come up in a psychology book, I'm saying to answer the question that this episode itself brings up. Why would Ronnie Ann be so casual in saying that, but not ever wonder why? Why would the parents also not wonder why? Well, we'll answer none of those questions and even less after we get back to SpongeBob.
If I ever see the guy who upset Clamu, I'd have a few choice words for him, like you, and a jerk.
When people speak about how they enjoy pre-movie Patrick, think of this example here. The episode has shown that he's the slowest of the pack, with a low emotional intelligence. His vocabulary is limiting, making the joke because this is what his mind could come up with. However, by the same token, he isn't aloof or so dumb that his input is meaningless. It's clear within the story that you have a lot of character that is here to vent, albeit a little Hemingway-ish to SpongeBob, giving SpongeBob that guilt while also being funny, but retaining to being that big, dumb, lovable oaf that we all know. Contrast this with times where Patrick is just the glutton or only the comedic relief, and his wholesomeness is often cast aside. This is what people mean when they say that they preferred pre-movie Patrick. Dumb, yes. Careless, sometimes malicious. To my knowledge, never.
Hey! Let's investigate this crime and catch the lowlife who's responsible.
Give it a rest, Patrick. There's no crime to investigate.
Here's another example of anger being used by a character who nowadays is only known for over-the-top happiness and over-the-top anger, if any at all. Yes, optimistic, bubbly, and overall high-off life comes to mind when I think of SpongeBob, but look back to my other verses, Can You Spare a Dime versus Squid's Visit. In that verses, I spoke a lot about how in Can You Spare a Dime, SpongeBob was shown to be angry both to Mr. Krabs and Squidward, and that never took away from his character. When he yelled at Squidward, he was getting frustrated with the way that Squidward was treating him, but didn't want to be rude. When he yelled at Mr. Krabs, he was getting frustrated with the stubbornness of both sides, but didn't want to be rude until he needed to be. Here it's the same thing where SpongeBob is just really nervous about the way that he thinks he's behind the Clamu meltdown. He uses anger to show Patrick that he doesn't want to talk about this, and while it works in retaining his character, it also wasn't over the top. In fact, it's a natural response when you feel guilt. When people talk about missing pre-movie SpongeBob, this is what they mean. Now we get to a great scene that has to be overlooked when discussing SpongeBob and this episode. As SpongeBob tries to get his mind off it with the mind-numbing powers of TV, he is greeted with the top story. A clam, a peanut left at the crime scene, and tons of people confused and hurt. The episode cleverly uses real-life imagery which fits in well with the aesthetic of the time. However, it was the vocal delivery of the realistic fish head that sold this for me.
What kind of cruel, careless, evil person would deliberately upset one of Neptune's most gentle creatures?
He then acts irrationally to everyone that speaks to him, which I don't see him as being unlikable because once again, guilt can make you do really outlandish things. It also has Gary playing the sniper, only being within the episode when necessary, and also treats both as equals, rather than a pet, which admittedly other shows also seem to align with, like for example how Family Guy can treat Stewie as a baby, but then also an evil diabolical mastermind who can hold his own, but also maybe gay, when it's funny. And then also a partner in crime to a dog, just whatever the episode needs at the moment, I guess. SpongeBob then approaches someone who couldn't hate him no matter what he does.
Let's say I know this guy who may have something to do with the oyster.
You mean you know the guy who did it?
Actually, I'm just talking hypothetically.
You mean you don't know who did it?
Well, no!
It's such a casual conversation that you can think this is an entirely different SpongeBob and Squidward. No one got physically hurt in the exchange, and Squidward didn't react as if he needed to leave the vicinity. Patrick is then shown to be an independent detective on the case. I really enjoyed that reaction that SpongeBob gives, literally being scared out of his pants. It's subtle but gave a unique charm to the show. SpongeBob then goes down the respect ladder and gets to Sandy, whom he tries to get advice from. However, unfortunately, in the middle of it, he suffers a sponge aneurysm.
When I find out who caused that oyster so much pain, no more jiggery-pokery! Now, what was it you wanted to talk about, SpongeBob?
What makes me enjoy this more than the Casagrandes is that I can sympathize with SpongeBob's efforts, knowing that it was really an honest mistake that anyone could have made. I can get immersed in the story and suspend my disbelief quite easily. We get more instances of Patrick's detective work with a joke about licking what looks to be SpongeBob, and it's actually funny. Trying to escape it all, SpongeBob goes back into his house again, trying to avoid it. Let's see what happens next when we finish off the Casagrandes. Alright, so in this next part, you may need to sit down. So Bobby and Carl decide to keep up the charade of Robo Sergio until Bobby actually finds him, apparently attempting to find him by looking in Sergio's favorite clubs. Even though the first time he had this bird bought, it had to be taken away immediately for fixing up, second time's a charm, right? Second time is not a charm. However, let me immerse you in what's about to happen, with no exaggeration at all. There was a scene earlier where Carl was demoing the drone to Bobby, and through the process, we saw that the bird also released guacamole, disguised as poop. Now, while Bobby knows that when Sergio poops, it's only guac, imagine not knowing that going into this next scene. one thing at a time, Jay. One thing at a time. Alright, so was the reaction of Robo Sergio pooping on the family all that good? To me, no. To you, probably. Does it warrant possibly trying out a different strategy that could have made the writing stronger? Yes, please scrap this. I'm not gonna faint at the sight of dog poop, but if it was sprayed like those metal things that are in the ceiling to stop fires, I surely am gonna have a more significant reaction in that. You're probably also wondering, Jay, are you saying that the family shouldn't freak out at the sight of one-eyed Sergio? No. I fully stand behind what I just said. No, the Casagrandes should not freak out at the sight of a one-eyed Sergio. I'm not being barbaric. I'm not even being edgy. I think it was a little bit of an overreaction. Want to know why? Because Sergio, scenes later, has his eye again. Yeah, he has his eye still. I don't care if that's an animation error because the final product is him popping his eye out but being perfectly fine when he goes out the window. If things weren't bad enough, Robo Sergio crashes into the van leading everyone to think that he died. And then Bobby comes clean.
I got in a big fight with Sergio and I told him to go away and never come back.
You did what?
I didn't mean it.
Yes, you did. You were upset that Sergio didn't take your feelings or thoughts into account and made fun of you whenever. You didn't want to see Sergio after he dropped guac, I think, on your head. What Sergio did was another jerk move because it just gives him leverage to do the exact same thing again when needed. Imagine this extended to a real life context. You have a bigger brother or sister and they feign running away to scare their parents because you didn't want them messing with you 24/7, especially during the times when it was inappropriate. Too unrealistic? Fair enough. How about the crazy girlfriend or boyfriend who threatens self-harm if you want them to leave you? That happens all the time. By this episode's logic, you should apologize and invalidate your feelings and just let them be a handful because they are right. A handful. Just like with VIP'd, the episode takes the safer route of succumbing to family good rather than addressing the core issue of there is a time and there's a place to mess with people, which, like in VIP'd, is a better moral to teach the children. It's a shame that there's this stigma of reviewers acting like every cartoon needs to have a moral. It really doesn't. And this side of me only really comes out with shows like this and try to push this bull in front of me. So just like with regular shows Lift Your Back, show me this half-hearted apology that supposedly makes everything better.
Had to teach Bobby a lesson.
Well, it worked. I'm sorry about what I said.
Me too. I know I'm a handful.
Oh, come here, you.
All it took was putting a ton of guilt over your family, threatening jail time over Bobby, the fear of being ostracized because of speaking your mind, a ton of money being wasted, the almost traumatizing moment of seeing your pet die, and now the looming threat of having all of this happen over again. But yes, please then show the last part of this episode to have them being friendly like all of this was just an irregular occurrence. Just two friends having a regular fight. Yeah, that's totally what happened here. No. Sergio was a jerk. The Casagrandes is too safe to handle subjects like this. I don't even know why they tried. End of story. Now let's go to that other obscure show that somehow does all these concepts better despite coming out earlier.
Were you at the zoo on the day of the oyster incident?
Yes!
Did you or did you not take part in various activities of zoo time merriment?
Yes!
And are you familiar with this peanut?
Yes!
Just one more question. Is it true that you were at the oyster's lair with a Mr. Patrick Starr?
Yes!
The way this is set up is smart. The middle portion of this episode shows Patrick being slightly angry at the mysterious figure that upset Clamu. He's shown to become a detective, to which SpongeBob doesn't question him. And to have police ask if he went to the zoo with Patrick sets up the situation to seem like Patrick was actually working with the law enforcement. However, the episode sweeps the rug from under you and have them arrest Patrick instead. There is a part here that does confuse me. However, it doubles up for being ahead of its time, if Twitter means anything. The cops tell Patrick the cliché phrase, "Tell it to the judge." However, they chain him up to be verbally abused, mocked, and ridiculed by the public. Those who already were heated and too emotionally invested to be any help. So is the court of public opinion? It isn't too bad, at least for Patrick, as he seems to be having a great time. It is kind of hard to watch this and not think about cancel culture nowadays, where people would be satisfied if this happened to the bad person of the week. Just replace peanuts with stones, and you have yourself a historically accurate way certain civilizations dealt with people of bad faith. We even get SpongeBob coming out with the overly long Twitter apology, or the 20-minute YouTube apology, of which one of the fish acts like me when said apologizer is taking so long.
Just get on with it!
I am the one who threw the peanut. I know now that what I have done is wrong. And so I say, I am sorry, giant performing oyster. I am sorry, Patrick. I am sorry, citizens of Bikini Bottom.
Hey! Let's throw peanuts at both of them!
This episode holds up way longer than it should have. It shows how much SpongeBob cares about Patrick to do this in public. He doesn't let Patrick get peanutted on, there is a difference, don't at me, and he expresses the guilt that he has. However, like all of the other people in the stadium, they all have it wrong as to why Clamu is mad. You see, within the beginning of the episode, it places the seeds that Mr. Crab is going all around the zoo, taking everything that isn't bolted down under the premise of National Free Day. So because he'll take anything free, he took the oyster's egg. It's a fantastic twist that lays out all the clues and makes the previous theory correct, as it can be plausible that Clamu did cry due to being hit with the peanut, but actually was crying because Clamu was looking for their child. However, she did not have the ability to voice her concerns. That's the charm that early SpongeBob episodes had, amongst the great music, great background, memorable faces, memorable lines, and the chemistry of the main cast. The Smoking Peanut is a great episode. Mr. Krabs gets peanutted to death after being stripped. Yes, there's a difference, don't at me, and this episode is clearly better than the other. It's pretty clear which episode did this better, that shouldn't be a surprise. It's funny how the episode that didn't want to teach morals handled the topic much better, but I understand that safeness is what keeps them from ruffling any more feathers than they need to, because the Loud House and the Casagrandes are trying to appeal to a very wide range of people with different morals and beliefs. Not my cup of tea, but that's why they're different flavors. Anyway, make sure to join the Panda Armada, alphaj.show/panda, Reddit, Discord, Amino, whatever you'd like. Click the link in the description. Until then, special thanks to the supporters of August, and until next time, take care. Alpha out.